Olympic weightlifting programming can seem like a mystery, and if you're short on time, even more so. With limited time to train, you need to make sure that you don't waste a single rep, exercise, or training block. In this video, I'll walk you through the considerations that you need for a 3-day-a-week training program, break down the exact 3-day-a-week training split that we use in our OlyStrong 3-day weightlifting team, and at the end of the video, I'll give you a free sample week of training. Now, when it comes to training 3 days a week, there's 3 things that we need to consider to build out a training program. Number 1, the frequency of Olympic lifts. Number 2, how you're going to gain strength for the Olympic lifts. And number 3, how much time you're going to dedicate to building muscle for the Olympic lifts. Now, when considering the frequency of your Olympic lifts, it's important to remember that as a beginner and even for a long time after that, the biggest barrier to making progress is going to be your skill in the snatch and clean and jerk. People who train the lifts more frequently will have more opportunities to gain mastery over the movements. They won't need to relearn the lift every week. They won't need as many warm-up reps, and they won't need as much volume to make progress. That means that with only 3 days a week to train, we need to make sure that we're doing the Olympic lifts every single session or as close to it as possible. Now, if you're performing the Olympic lifts every session, then I recommend modifying the weight and volume of each session to make sure that you can still get proper recovery. This can be done by simply keeping the weights lighter or by choosing variations of the Olympic lifts that are either more specific to the competition lift or more specific to your personal technique breakdown, or some blend of both like I use. The next consideration is how to gain strength for the Olympic lifts. While we compete in the snatch and clean and jerk, weightlifting is still a strength sport. At the end of the day, if you can't squat it, you will not clean it. And it's important to make sure that you're choosing the exercises that give you the most bang for your buck. There are really only 6 exercises that you need to be doing: the back squat, the front squat, the strict press, the push press, the snatch pull, and the clean pull. Now, the back squat is probably the most important. It's the ceiling strength for your squat pattern, which means that if you make progress on this lift, most likely all of your other lifts will increase as well. The front squat is a strength exercise that supports the clean the most. Without a big front squat, it will be challenging to make progress on your clean. So if you have a big back squat but not a big front squat, then I recommend focusing on the front squat. And especially so if your clean is very close to your front squat max. But if you have a good balance between your back squat, clean, and front squat, then I recommend doing the back squat once a week and the front squat once a week. The strict press is an upper body strength exercise that is often neglected by weightlifters, but for those with a weak upper body and a strong lower body, like a lot of weightlifters have, then this should be your main pressing strength exercise. I recommend doing this once, if not twice a week. Now, the push press is another fantastic upper body strength exercise, but it's also a bit of a power exercise that carries over to the jerk fairly well. It's going to build less muscle than the strict press as the legs are launching the bar through the majority of the challenging range of motion. One way that I like to train the push press is by building up to a heavy top set of 1 to 5 reps for the push press, and then dropping the weight down and performing strict presses in the 5 to 10 rep range. This allows you to build the strength and power in the push press and still build muscle with the strict press. The snatch pull is an exercise designed to overload and strengthen your pull for the snatch. Many people use it as a technique exercise, which is fine, but I found that it's most effective in the 3 to 5 rep range with anywhere from 85 to 120% of your max snatch. This exercise only needs to be trained 1 time a week, and if you have a really strong pull, it's probably an optional exercise, especially if you're short on time. If that's the case, you can sneak it into a little bit of your training with complexes like 1 to 2 pulls before a snatch. However, this will lead to less strength benefits and probably give you more technique benefits. On the other side of that coin is the clean pull, an exercise designed to strengthen your pull for the clean. This exercise is unique in that it can often be loaded as heavy or heavier than what you can back squat, making it a primary strength exercise for any training program. You can also use this as a substitute for squats if you're dealing with a knee injury or if squatting is out of the question for you right now. and still make a lot of progress in your strength. This, like the snatch pull, only needs to be trained one time a week in the 3 to 5 rep range with anywhere from 85 to 120% of your best clean. If you're looking to build out a balanced training program, I simply recommend doing snatch pulls once a week and clean pulls once a week. Now, the final consideration for building out a 3-day weightlifting program is how much time are you going to dedicate to building muscle. Now, there is largely very little difference between building strength and building muscle when it comes to Olympic weightlifting. The exercises that build the most strength, the back squat, strict press, and clean pull, will also largely build the most muscle. However, if you want to maximize muscle growth beyond whatever muscle that you build as a byproduct of strength training, you're going to need to do additional bodybuilding work, or as weightlifters and powerlifters often call it, accessory or auxiliary work. Accessory work is largely comprised of isolation exercises with one of two focuses: complementary accessory work or supplementary accessory work. Complementary accessory exercises are any exercise that trains a movement pattern or muscle group that is largely trained by typical weightlifting programming. These exercises are often chosen to add extra volume to a weak point in someone's technique that a weightlifter might notice. For example, if you have a hard time keeping your hips low in the first pull of a snatch or clean, then adding in some extra work for the quads and lower back through Bulgarian split squats and hip extensions might be a good idea. However, only focusing on muscle groups or movement patterns that are typically trained through weightlifting programming is not always a great idea. While it might speed up your immediate progress, it does help to make sure that you are approaching your training with a little bit of a holistic approach regularly throughout the year. That's where supplementary accessory work comes in. Supplementary accessory work is any exercise that trains a movement pattern or muscle group that is not directly trained through typical weightlifting programming. Weightlifting largely consists of sagittal plane exercises that target the quads, upper back, lower back, and shoulders. So when choosing accessory exercises, we want to find exercises that don't target those main areas, but that will still help improve something in your technique in the snatch and clean and jerk. For example, if you are able to keep the bar really close to you in the snatch, but you feel very unstable at the bottom of the catch or frequently miss the bar behind, then it might be a good idea to incorporate some dumbbell bench into your training program to strengthen up the areas around your shoulder. Now, choosing the right accessory work for your specific needs can be tough, so if you need help with that, check out our free Accessories 101 guide for weightlifters linked in the description below. Now that you know the considerations that we're looking at when building a 3-day weightlifting program, what is the best way to organize it into an actual training split? I found that the best 3-day-a-week training split for weightlifting has Olympic lifts every session, strength work every session, and full body accessory work every session. This means that your workouts will be fairly long, probably close to 90 minutes or 2 hours. But I'm going to lay this out in a way where if you are limited on time and you need to pull out exercises, you can pull them out in reverse order of which they appear. This will allow you to prioritize the Olympic lifts first, strength work second, and hypertrophy work third. This training split can be done on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, or any variation that works best for you, though I do recommend trying to keep at least one day of rest between each workout. Now, I know that if you are short on time to train, you don't always get to choose the days that you work out, and that's okay. Training at all is more important than having the most optimal training week. The first day of the week is when we practice the snatch and clean and jerk with higher reps and lower weight. This can be done through traditional doubles or triples between 70 and 85%, or you can use my favorite method, on the minute work, which you can learn more about in this video right here, or here. I've never done this. It's up here somewhere. Either way, this is where you can get the most technical practice and set the pace for the week. After your Olympic lifts, we'll then move on to back squats. I recommend following a long-term progression for the squat and for all of your strength work. I normally follow the progression in our 12-week squat program, which uses the top set, drop set method, where you build up to a heavy top set and then perform 3 drop sets with higher reps. Then across 12 weeks, you'll drop the reps down and increase the weight gradually. And you can find that squat program linked in the description below. After the squats, we'll then perform an accessory circuit that targets the quads, upper back, and lower back. Now, training the full body like this in accessory work, especially for hypertrophy work, may not be the most optimal way to build muscle, but as a weightlifter, it helps to make sure that you are generally fatigued everywhere throughout the entire week rather than specifically sore in one or two areas. The second day of the week is focused on powers, pulls, presses, and full body accessories. We'll start the session with some moderately challenging power variations of the Olympic lifts. Now, you could absolutely perform full snatch and clean and jerk if you wanted to be very specific to the Olympic lifts, but you would likely need to be careful with the weight selection to make sure that you are still able to recover from your training. I typically program the power snatch and power clean for 3 to 5 sets of doubles or triples between 75 to 85% of your power maxes. I'll also frequently implement something like a variation complex to help address any specific technique weaknesses, like the hip power snatch plus power snatch. After the Olympic lifts, we'll then move on to snatch pulls. Now, I know that I said earlier that you could pull exercises out in reverse order, but the pulls are an exception to this. And the reason for that is simple. It's just kind of dumb to do your Olympic lifts, then move to a rack for our presses, and then back down to the ground for pulls. Just leave the bar where it is, get your pulls out of the way, and then you can start working on your presses. So if you need to remove an exercise to save some time, I would remove the pulls and not the presses. For the pulls, I'll program them for 3 to 5 sets of 2 to 5 reps between 85 and 120% of your snatch. Now, I know that this is a pretty large range, but this really largely just depends on the phase of training that you're in. If you're closer to competition, you may be a little bit lower on that percentage range, maybe in the middle. And if you're further away from competition and you're really focused on strength building, you may be higher up on that percentage range. After the pulls, we'll transition to the rack for upper body pressing. Again, if you have weak shoulders but strong legs, then I recommend focusing on the strict press. And if you have the opposite, strong shoulders but weak legs, then I recommend focusing on the push press. And if you're generally even across the board, you can work up to a heavy top set for the push press and then perform your drop sets with the strict press. And as far as the rep scheme goes, I'll typically follow the exact same rep scheme and loading percentage that we used for the squats on day 1, depending on where we're at in that 12-week strength cycle. Following the presses, we'll finish the session with a full body accessory circuit that targets the hamstrings, shoulders, or arms, and a body weight core exercise like the hollow body hold. And a side note on this, if you can squat 400 pounds but you can't do a 15-second hollow body hold without shaking uncontrollably, that's probably a sign that you need to work on some body weight exercises. This doesn't mean that you need to be able to do something like a pistol squat, like some people will say, to be able to squat a barbell. That's just absurd. But controlling your body weight is generally a good thing to be able to do. Now, day 3 is the most fun day of the week. If you're familiar with weightlifting, you know it's something of a tradition to go heavy on the Olympic lifts on Fridays, or Big Friday. For this session, we're going to build up to a heavy top set of 1, 2, or 3 reps of an Olympic lift, or some variation complex like 2 cleans plus 1 jerk. Now, just because I said that we're building up to a heavy top set does not mean that we are maxing out every week. But it does mean that you do need to practice lifting something fairly heavy regularly. However, we can manage the intensity of these exercises by performing higher rep Olympic lift sets like triples or doubles, or by using variations or complexes, all of which will limit the max amount of weight that we can use while still making the lift feel very heavy, while addressing certain technical weaknesses or qualities that we may need to develop. For example, a snatch pull plus snatch is an exercise that you can lift fairly heavy on, but not as heavy as a regular snatch, which means that you could save some of this recovery that you've gained and put it on something like squats, especially if you're in a phase where the squat is very heavy and you're trying to push that. Similarly, if someone lacks leg strength or endurance in the clean and jerk, then doing something like 2 cleans plus 1 jerk, or clean plus front squat plus jerk, might help to allow you to develop the leg strength or endurance that you need for heavy clean and jerks without actually having to do heavy clean and jerks. After the Olympic lifts, we'll then move on to clean pulls. We'll treat these clean pulls exactly the same as we treat the snatch pull. 3 to 5 sets of 2 to 5 reps between 85 and 120% of your max clean, depending on the phase of training that you're in. And again, while clean pulls are important, they're not as important as the front squats that follow. So if you're looking to save some time on your workouts, I'd recommend getting rid of clean pulls after you get rid of accessory work. Following the clean pull, we'll then move on to the front squat, using the same exact rep scheme and 12-week progression that we use for the back squat and strict press. Again, you can find that exact 12-week program linked in the description below. After the front squats, we'll finish the session with an accessory circuit that targets the quads, shoulders or arms, and either lower back or a challenging core exercise. Now this is the day to go as hard as possible on your accessory work, as you're going to have 2 whole days of rest before your next day of training, which is plenty of time to recover. So choose exercises that are very stimulating and or typically make you very sore that you would maybe normally avoid earlier in the week if you're trying to push your main training harder. These exercises are important to incorporate as they're still going to drive the most long-term progress when trying to build muscle. Now it's time to put all of this into a week of training for you to try. So day 1, we're going to start with the snatch, a 15-minute EMOM at 70%. You're just performing 1 rep every minute at 70%. We'll do the exact same thing for the clean and jerk immediately after. If you've never done on-the-minute work for the clean and jerk, you may want to set this up where you do a minute of rest in between instead of doing 1 lift every minute, especially if you're lacking in the cardio department. After the clean and jerks, we'll move on to back squats. We'll perform a heavy top set of 3 at about 73%, then drop the weight down to 70% of your top set for 3 sets of 10 reps. Then for accessories, we'll do 3 sets of 6 to 10 reps of a Bulgarian split squat, a dumbbell row, and a GHD hip extension. All of these exercises should be done with the weight that takes you to or near failure in that rep scheme. If you can comfortably do 10 every single time, bump that weight up so that it's a challenge to get 7 reps. On day 2, we'll start with power snatches, 5 sets of 2 at 75% of your power snatch max, and then same thing for the power clean, 5 sets of 2 at 75% of your power clean max. Then we'll move on to snatch pulls, 3 sets of 5 at 85 to 90% of your max snatch. And before you ask, yes, they are high pulls. All snatch pulls are high pulls, and how high the bar gets is just dictated by the weight that you use. Following the snatch pulls, we'll move on to the strict press. 1 heavy set of 3 at 73%, then drop down to 70% of that top set for 3 sets of 10 reps. And for accessories, we'll do 3 sets of 6 to 10 reps of an RDL, skull crushers, and a 30-second hollow body hold. And finally, for day 3, Big Friday, we're going to build up to a heavy top set of a snatch pull plus snatch, then a heavy top set of 2 cleans plus 1 jerk. After the Olympic lifts, we'll move on to clean pulls, 3 sets of 5 at 85% of your clean max. After the clean pulls, we've got front squats, the same rep scheme that we use for our strict press and back squat. Build up to 1 set of 3 at 73%, then drop down to 70% of your top triple for the day for 3 sets of 10. And for accessories, we'll do 3 sets of 6 to 10 reps of front foot elevated split squats, dumbbell bench press, and ab wheels. Feel free to give that week of training a try, but if you want to track all of your workouts and give a sample week of training from my OlyStrong weightlifting team a try, you can find a link for it in the description below, as well as all of the other programs that I mentioned. And if you found this video helpful, then please make sure to subscribe to the channel. We'll catch you guys on the next one. Bye.